how come someone who has a 4-year apprenticeship, all of that work doesn't amount to a bachelor's degree in electricity? Why isn't that out there? We have to invest in somebody wanting to be an electrician just as much as we invest in somebody who wants to get a degree in English.
Hello, everybody. I am Scott Pieper, the CEO and co-founder of Mobilization Funding, and you are listening to the Real MF'ers podcast with my co-host, Autumn Sullivan. Today, we have a very special guest, the president and CEO of the ABC Associated Building Contractors here, the Gulf Coast chapter here in Tampa, Florida, Steve Cona. And today, you're going to hear us talk about everything from the apprenticeship programs that are needed, certifications versus degrees, cash flow in construction, different legislative matters that are going to be presented to the state and other states to try to make that cash flow problem better, and much, much more. Steve, welcome.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Autumn. It's great to be with you guys today.
Thanks. We're happy to have you, Steve.
Well, I want to jump right into it, Steve. Why don't you tell everybody just a little bit about your story, how you got into construction. You come from a long line of folks in the construction industry. I know it's something you're super passionate about and have spent a great majority of your life in. Tell us just a little bit about how you got into it and ultimately evolved into the president of ABC.
Yeah, so it's an interesting story because obviously I was raised by carpenters. My grandfather was a carpenter. My dad's a carpenter. All my uncles are carpenters. They built, so many houses when I was growing up. Every house that we drove by, my grandfather said, we built that, we did that. So I grew up being involved in the construction industry. And what's amazing is the whole time that I was involved, my grandfather and my dad were like, you really need to go to college. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. You guys seem to be making a good living, doing what you're doing. No one really had a college degree. I think my dad had an AA degree, but they learned a skill and they figured out a way to monetize it, and they made a great living from themselves. But they always wanted their kids and grandkids to go to college, and not realizing, right, the potential of really passing on the skill of being able to build something with your own hands. Instead, they bought in, obviously, to a narrative of, he doesn't have to work so hard. But I will tell you, my grandfather, no better role model in the world to have to look up to than somebody who can wake up every morning, build something, monetize it, and live a great life. He was the wealthiest man I knew. And, the fact that, he, didn't graduate from high school, I guess, those lessons they wanted to pass on, and thinking that, sending somebody to college was going to, be, something that would, better them. When in grand scheme of things, look, their grandson, I went to college. Quite honestly, I hated every minute of it. I begrudgingly finished at the University of South Florida, got my degree in marketing, started my career in the telecommunications industry, and now, wound up back in the construction industry where, I could have probably saved some steps and gotten here a lot sooner. But no, it's one of those things where I think the construction industry for a very long time has taken people, trained them, taught them skills, and given them things that they've never that they can make a great living at. They can become millionaires. It's the quickest way to become a millionaire I know is to get into this industry because it's much needed and not a lot of people do it anymore.
Such a good point. When I was growing up, I always thought, I want to be a millionaire. And then you start to grow up and you realize what dollars are worth and what you can get and what you can equate to. And I remember the first time my dad told me how much our house cost, and the sad part is the house cost $35,000. But at the time he told me that the house cost $35,000, it was such an extraordinary amount of money that I never in a million years thought that we would be, I would be able to buy a house that cost $35,000. Now granted, that might have been in the early 80s and that house might be worth a lot more now today. But nonetheless, that perception and that level of thought is the separation number is probably the same for everybody. So,
right. It's all relative, it's all relative in the grand scheme of things. It was no easier or, no harder than it is now, quite honestly.
Correct.
It's just more zeros at the end of it. That's all.
That's it. It's the same process, the same struggles, the same benefits, advantages, excitement, shortcomings. It's all the same. Have you found, as you entered in or seen new folks that enter into the construction world, how many of them do you think actually become millionaires that start out to be?
Well, I can tell you, we represent probably, 540 contractors in our network alone. And I will tell you that every millionaire that I know in the construction industry started off learning a skill. And then, figuring out a way to monetize that skill, figuring out a way to be better than the guy next to him or the girl next to him, and figure out a way to make money. And those are the ones that learned how to build something first and then figured out a way to turn that into a business that made them millionaires. So I have a very large network, and the majority of the network of people that I know that are millionaires come from the construction industry.
I think that's so interesting because and it leads to my first question, which is why, knowing that that's true, knowing that that's the case, that there's so much opportunity in construction, why has it become the poster child or the butt of the joke of what happens if you don't go to college? Why is the perception of construction what it is?
Because you know what, I think a long time ago, somewhere, when people were out in the sun and learning how to build things and creating things, there was a stigmatism that those people that were, they had to work too hard for a living. And quite honestly, regardless in my belief, what you do, we've lost the teaching of the work ethic. That's the biggest problem I think that we have now, is that there is no work ethic being taught. Like, everyone's just getting passed from one educational institution to another and really not actually learning how to work and to be able to, sustain yourself and learning those skills and traits where, someone who worked outside every day, they knew it was hot and they knew they were learning a skill. And they wanted to learn that skill and learn how to be really good at it so that they could actually be the boss or the superintendent so they can work in the air condition. But, you can't have it all at once, right? I mean, you have to be able to learn how to work, how to show up. And people who do that get rewarded for that. And I think that's one of the things, in society today that, we're really struggling with, is because there's a lot of people who want to come into an industry, but realize initially it's going to take a lot of work. And that's any industry. It's not just ours, right? I mean, it's any industry. If you want to succeed and you want to be a millionaire and you want to be successful, people who are successful get there because they work and they work hard and they figure out a way to do that. And they're not satisfied with being, broke or living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah. You bring up such a good point. I've read many things, and one of the separators of businesses that work or don't, businesses that focus on making money are way less successful or have the chance of success than businesses that just are started or seek out to solve a problem and build something, to create something of value for the people that are out there. And construction is a perfect example of that. There's a problem. You have nothing on the ground and it needs to turn into something that someone designed or made. And, you work with your hands and taking those skills and knowledge and putting them into application in practical terms. That's the part that gets missed in school. And to defend school a little bit, I'm not always the defender of school, but to defend them a touch, you can learn. Like my daughter was studying for a geometry test last night. She's memorizing the formulas and she's using it. Well, there's someone who learns geometry and then learns how to send a spaceship to the moon, Or there's
Right.
someone that just learns how to get an A on the geometry test.
Mhm.
There's something that happens between that person, same one who leaves school and applies it to solving a problem like sending rockets to the moon, or someone who doesn't. They both got the same A on the test. They both all know the formulas, but how do you apply it? And that's the missing piece that gets stuck in school. But I think in trade school, if you think about the biggest difference, or you're learning a trade, you learn it and you're using it immediately in application. And that's the missing link that actually sends people out of the world ready to actually do something with this knowledge.
Yeah, no, I can't agree with you more. I think that you're right. That is the missing piece. And I think the other missing piece is, I don't think our educational institutions, and trust me, I'm a product of public schools. I went to the University of South Florida. It's a great school, but really the education, everything else around in the world has evolved and got smarter and more efficient. I don't think the educational system has caught up with the idea of, why does it still take, 60 credit hours to get, an AA degree and 120, hours to get a master's, when quite honestly, people can get educated and become bigger thinkers. The internet is all over the place. People can learn in any multiple, forms of another. I think, the institutions have gotten out of actually testing and ensuring that there's actually competency in what they're teaching, right? Like you have to prove that you're competent, right? I mean, I graduated with a marketing degree. I'm not sure that I left being competent and, being a, CEO of a marketing firm at that point, but, what are we proving? How prepared are folks coming out of college? I know when, our folks get out of apprenticeship and they go from knowing absolutely nothing to a journeyman in their trade in 4 years, I see the growth and I know that they have those competencies because they've demonstrated them.
Mm-hmm.
We don't expect that coming, from, a marketing major or an English major, coming out of college. So, we have to, competency-based training has to be evolved. And I think the education system has to start embracing that.
That's a good point. Autumn, did you have a question you were going to ask?
Oh, I was going to say, so when you were talking about, it's hard work, regardless of, whichever path you choose, it's all hard work. And Scott, I know you have a quote from, is it Andy who says, choose your hard? It's all hard. You just choose what kind of hard you want. And
it was one of the best phrases I ever heard and I learned, but he was like, let me just give you guys a news flash. Now, if you don't follow Andy Frisella, he has a very unique way of putting it. It's actually the exact way that I speak to myself in my own brain. It's not necessarily meant for everyone verbally, but basically it sounds a lot like this. Listen, guys, everybody spends their whole life trying to figure out how to avoid what's hard. And the key is nothing great happens on the easy side of hard. It's all hard. Everything is hard. There is no hack. There's no shortcut. It's all hard. So choose right now the choice you have is which hard you want to participate in. Being broke is hard. Working hard is hard. Figuring out a way to solve a problem, build a building is really hard. It's all hard. Raising kids is hard. Being a great dad, being a great mom, it's all hard. Just choose which hard you want to participate in, and then you have to deal with the consequences of the hard you choose. That's it.
You're exactly right.
Period.
You're exactly right. Life is hard and it's relentless. And, and you can choose to, weigh on the side of misery, or you can weigh on the side of optimism and wanting to be better. It's that simple. It's all hard.
And I think if we, like the idea of spending all day outside working in landscaping would not be like, I would be like, oh yeah, sign me up. That's a thing I can do. I love being outdoors and I love gardening. I'll spend all day working, but my husband did commercial HVAC, and the idea of being up in those attics all day, that sounds awful, but he loved it. That was the hard that he chose. And you can make a really good living choosing your hard because it's something that's fulfilling to you. And that's the part that I don't think we do a really good job of telling people, particularly in the skilled trades conversation. If that's what you like, if you like the big cranes, if you're fascinated by engineering, you don't have to necessarily go get a 4-year degree. You can become an apprentice and work the hard that appeals to you.
Yeah. And I know that, we have all these tech companies now that, they're becoming a little bit disenfranchised with obviously the products that are coming out of, our educational institutions, and they're creating their own frameworks and own training programs.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's almost like apprenticeship for, the tech industry right now. Google will hire anybody who can figure out how to write code and, if they can just give you the training wheels and the, guidelines, businesses now in my opinion, need to start investing in more apprenticeship type of programs, to get people involved. College, I believe college is great. I think I learned a lot in college, but I would have liked to have way more practical use of it instead of sitting here and wondering how I was going to work. If a company invested in me, like I graduated debt free because I went and worked for a company that paid for my college. But I got way more value working for, back in the day, GTE, as they were paying for my college. I got way more knowledge of how business works and how to deal with people working. And then I just use what I learned in college as, as more relevance to the stuff I was doing. But I mean, let's be honest. I think you learn by doing. And, I think more businesses, I think what you're going to see in the future, I'm not a futurist by any chance, by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think you're going to see businesses, because of the skilled labor shortage, not only in the construction industry now, but every industry. I think you're going to see these businesses take it upon themselves to incorporate more apprenticeship type programs where they're going to invest in people who don't know much, but they're going to train them up, and they're going to train them the way that they believe they can be successful and invest more in their employees. I think if you had that, and then you mix college into that, right? You make college part of that experience. I think that is, creates a more well-rounded individual and worker, and obviously somebody who can be self-reliant in the future.
I couldn't agree with you more, because it's the absence of learning how to apply it in the real world. And that's an easy phrase. So I'll be even more specific. In a job or a position or a company or with people for which you are aligned and trying to accomplish the same goal. You have to learn how you can take your seat in that table or on that boat, wherever it is in the phase of what you're doing, and still add value. And it's not perceived value, it's real value. And just be candid with what you can and can't do, and ask questions. Everybody feels like you come out of school and you're supposed to have this degree and you're supposed to have all this knowledge, and they don't want to ask questions because they feel like it's going to make them sound stupid. Or, you should be asking questions right out of the gate so that you can take that foundation of information that you learn in a classroom and be able to apply it. But you have to ask questions to do that, especially in the absence of real practical training.
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure. And, I just think that we're going to have to see some sort of evolution, because I've never been, in a market or an economy, and I guess it's coming out of the pandemic and no one, expected it. But we have a lot of people still sitting on the sidelines and just not knowing, what they want to do. I mean, not everybody, we can't all survive if, half the population is working from home. We have to figure out a way to continue to move and grow and do things and learn new things and evolve. So I think you're going to see businesses doing a lot more investing in their employee base and training and figuring out a way to excite and develop people, in the workforce.
Well, that was my next question, was how do we get those young people excited about the idea of a skill? How do we break through that old stereotype of, you have to go to college or you end up digging ditches and that's a bad thing. So how do we get those kids excited about a career in skilled trades? And it sounds like a big part of that is companies recruiting early.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of it too is, and I hate to say, you have to start getting the message to the parents, right? Because once mom and dad, have their first child, and the next thing they do is they open up a 529 account, or a prepaid college account because one day, little Sue or little Johnny is going to go and, going to go to Harvard. Well, it doesn't necessarily work that way. In fact, for someone who sat on a school board, I know not every kid goes to college, and the ones that do go to college, a lot of them don't finish. So where are we saying, where are we trying to get them back? So we have to just open up their minds to different opportunities and pathways to success, starting in elementary school, starting in middle school. Like, you can't just focus, kids on, achieving test results that are going to get them into college. We have to start testing aptitudes. We still have to start testing, teaching them how to work, teaching them how to earn, teaching them how to be responsible. Those are all things that, we need to start doing. And it comes down to the parental level. We've lost a whole society, a whole generation of skilled workers because we forced them all to go to college. Now I'm getting them back, but I'm getting them back at, 30 years old, 28 years old after, they could have been earning a lot more money coming into the construction industry at 18 than at 28. So, but we've lost that generation. Now they're coming back because they're realizing, if I can figure out how to learn a skill, I can make a lot of money doing it. And I don't have to, and quite honestly, the construction week, it's an early start, but most of those guys are off by 3:00 every day. And Friday, they usually done by 2:30, and there's not a lot of weekend work. And, I will tell you, I'll give you a story. We've been doing a lot of high school outreach. We hired some kids from Pasco schools and got them into working with one of our electrical companies. This kid right out of high school came through our apprenticeship program. Before he was done, third year, he already had a brand new F-150. He had a bass boat, 22 years old. And now he's the superintendent and running work. And, what else do you want from, that's success in my book, right? Doesn't have a 4-year degree, but, is probably pulling down 70 to 80 grand a year. And, a single guy, he's living his dreams right now. So those opportunities are out there. But he came into the industry knowing what he wanted to do, and he had a work ethic, and he went out and earned it. And that's, I think, the missing piece. I think some parents instill that work ethic into their kids, and I think some think that the educational system is going to do it, and it doesn't really happen that way.
Those are perfect kids too, that at that point, he's making 70 or 80 grand. He's got great practical experience, and he decides all of a sudden, I really want to own this business, or I want to lead a bigger team, or I'd like to figure out how to take this project from its inception and not just manage the team, but really do it. And then he goes back to school at that point, or maybe gets a 2-year degree on something that's specific to what he knows he wants to do at that point.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what takes him to the next income levels that he wants, or he fills the gap of information he needs with that while he's still working. And that's the perfect use for school in a case like that.
And he doesn't graduate with tens of thousands of student loan debt.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. No, and I will tell you, I truly believe right now that if I went back to school and actually learned the same thing I learned when I was in school, I'd probably be a lot better student and actually have more practical use for what because I know where the pitfalls are of, somebody who has worked. And I'll give you my wife is a great example. My wife, she just graduated from Florida International University with her bachelor's degree, but, she started working right out of high school. Figure out a way to make a living, raised a family, started her own business, got all the HR certifications she could get, but it never stopped her from earning. But I think she was a better student because she knew how to work and knew, what it was she wanted out of college, instead of it, being kind of dictated to you without any practical use or knowledge of how to implement it. I think you're a better student if you know what you want to do and you go in there, to really take advantage of it.
So true.
Absolutely. I want to switch gears just a little bit because
Sure.
I want to talk about advocacy, because I know a big part of what you do at ABC is advocacy for the industry. And so I was curious what kind of legislative actions, what kind of advocacy campaigns you guys have going on right now.
Well, I think there's two things that we focus on as an industry. One, obviously, is workforce, and we've been talking about that a lot, and apprenticeship training and how that's funded by the state. The state does a nice job. Florida is unique. Florida funds apprenticeship training, but it's not at the same dollar value as they fund 4-year universities or 2-year universities. And why is that different? So I think, advocating for more funding in that realm has always been something that we're working on, and we've made some great strides there. There's been a lot more investment over the last 3 years in workforce education. I think Governor DeSantis has heard the cries of our industry and is really, going through and trying to deliver as much funds to help apprenticeship programs as he can, and that's been useful. But there's still room for growth there. I mean, we have to invest in somebody wanting to be an electrician just as much as we invest in somebody who wants to get a degree in English. And until that's the same, we're going to keep fighting, because we believe that that should happen. And I really think what we need to do, the next level of advocacy, is to really talk to the educational folks out there, the community colleges and the public universities, and really say, how come someone who has a 4-year apprenticeship that has had all the book work, has done all the OJT hours, and all of that work doesn't amount to a bachelor's degree in electricity? Like, why isn't that possible, right? And why isn't that out there? To me, it makes no sense that, we're giving certificates to somebody who learns to be an electrician and doctorates to somebody who learns, how to speak proper English. I think there's a mismatch there, right? I think we need to be better. We need to be better at that. We're better as a society than to say someone who learned to be an electrician is less, because I can tell you, when that English major has a problem and their lights go out, there's only one person that can fix it, and that's the guy who has a certificate. So, we need to do better at that. And
I'm feeling very attacked as an English major, Steve.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying. Hey, you too can learn how to turn your lights back on when they go out.
I can't. I have a husband who has certificates, and he fixes when the lights go out.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's the part of advocacy that we need to work towards. Like, I think you really need to level the playing field as far as funding goes, and we're working towards that. It's not perfect. We have to break through a lot of societal norms to get to where we want to go there. But I think, someone who works 8,000 OJT hours and 2,000 hours a year and puts in 144 hours a year of book work is just as, deserves to have a bachelor's degree than someone, who doesn't do all that, on the job experience and other things. So the curriculum is just as hard, and I think we need to start valuing those occupations just like we value the ones that come out of the university system.
Absolutely. You guys worked on the talking about leveling the playing field in terms of funding. You guys were instrumental in the changing of the retainage.
Yes.
For Florida.
So at one of our board meetings, we talked about, why is retainage still at 10%? Especially, and Scott and we've talked about this 100 times. I mean, the construction industry is the only industry that will finance a whole project with no guarantee of getting paid for what they do, which is amazing. Don't
forget why you hold 50% or more of the profit for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. While the person who asked you to build the project is holding your profit. It's crazy. So we wanted to try to, what we do for our members is we want to make sure that we are advocating to make sure that it's easier for them to deliver work, right? I mean, any law that we can pass that will help them with cash flow, any law that we can pass would help them with their workforce, any law that we can pass that can help them be more safe and be more profitable, we're gonna go after. And that was one that I think was easy. It was easy pickings. It only took us one session to actually pass that, which if you know how Tallahassee is, usually it's a 5-year experience to try to get something done. But we were able to get that done in 1 year because it just made perfect sense. Moving it from 10 to 5 on public projects was a big deal. Obviously, we still have some municipalities who want to hold on to that 10%, but now that it's the law, it's a little bit easier for us to recommend that they drop that percentage down. So it's been good. So anything that we can do to advocate to make sure our members can deliver work at a profit, we're gonna do.
Steve, I got to stop you right there because what you just said is something we harp on all the time. And I want to make sure this audience hears what you just said. Here's the president of Associated Building Contractors who spends countless hours generating money for the construction industry, the apprenticeship programs, the labor, who just stated the entire purpose is to deliver work for the clients. He didn't say deliver the cheapest work. He said deliver work. So price and the cost is not the most important thing. It's performance of the work is the most critical thing to the owners, to the general contractors. It should be to the subcontractors and anyone in between. And it's clearly the most important thing for the entire organization, president, who focuses all of his attention on performance. That is the key. And that's what I'm going to hammer home again and again and again, everybody's focus on performance and how you can deliver performance on time, every time, and forget about delivering on the lowest price. And you're going to find that you're going to attract the best work, who the real owners, the real GCs, the real subs that are aligned to you. Focus on why you can perform and build. That is the key. And you just said it. Like, I didn't even have to ask you. There you go. Like, that is the most important critical component. It's so great to hear that that's what your focus is and is on. And you know what? We didn't even script this as part of that. Like that's
No.
But
I mean, look, we live it every day, right? We know the challenges. We know how hard in our industry it is to deliver the work, right? We know that you have to be the best of the best to deliver some of these facilities that you're seeing popping up all over town, right? You can't build these buildings without having, being able to have sophisticated contractors go out there and deliver work and be able to make a profit. Because look, my grandfather told me this a long time ago. If you're going to work for free, you might as well stay home. And nobody works for free. And you have to be able to not only deliver, but in our industry, there's a little bit more than just delivering. In order for you to deliver, there has to be a lot of things go your way to have a successful project. And that's why, obviously, some of the things that we're doing with mobilization funding, I think help our members deliver that work while maintaining, their companies and their cash flow and everything that we've talked about in the past.
And Steve, I was going to ask you, and Autumn brought it up now too, the changes you've made for cash flow cycle and certainly releasing retainage, that directly helps. And not only releasing it, but also lowering it from 10% to 5%. That inherently is going to bring more cash into the project sooner. But, one of the things you and I have focused on, and of course, the mobilization funding loan program that we built it on, is trying to find a way to change the cash flow cycle and I call it the waterfall. Like, how can we get the money on the project to start flowing off that project in a faster manner? And is there legislation that is out there now that we can work on? Of course, there's loan programs, the ABC loan program and mobilization funding and our partnership does that. But is there a way to do it where a contractor wouldn't have to? Is there laws or rules that we can put in place where a contractor doesn't have to doesn't have to find a loan to do it? They can it can happen within the project. Is there anything on the table or ways of thought process that you've seen or are being worked on now?
Well, I think we have to be creative because right now, obviously in the economy that we're living in now, with pricing being all over the place And obviously with skilled labor being, hard to find and hard to develop, what is the next phase of advocacy that we're going to do for our industry? How are we as an industry going to evolve? And I think as thought leaders in this industry, I sit in all of my board sometimes with some of the issues that they have to, overcome. So I think we need to come together, stakeholders, contractors come together, GCs, subs, associates, suppliers, just come together and figure out how is it that we can start, delivering this work where everybody is able to deliver the project without being, cash strapped the whole entire time until, the owner decides to pay. You don't go into a movie theater, and watch a movie and then pay for it afterwards, right? Like you pay before you go in, and if you didn't like it, oh well, So I'm not sure of many industries that would finance the whole project without, promise of getting paid, and that's something I think we all have to figure out a way to work on. Figure out a way to deliver the cash when it's needed into a project so that we're not stretching out our supplier base. We're not stretching out our sub base. I think, like I said, I'm not a futurist, but I think if the great companies that we have, if we can get them to the next level by giving them a tool like what you guys are offering, I think you can really help a company grow and take them to the next level. So that's why I believe in what you guys are doing.
I appreciate that. And I haven't heard you articulate it before. I knew it was important and valuable, and we do care a lot about it. And as you know, we've launched the cash flow tool, and you've been gracious enough to give us time with your members and audience to launch that. And that cash flow tool that Steve's referring to, yes, we use it for our loan program, but we have it on our website that any client or not, any person on this earth can literally go to our website and use the cash flow tool to their benefit. So what does that mean? You don't need a loan, but you still want to know what your cash flow is. Should you take the project? The stuff that we would do for clients that Steve outlined, we have now on our website that you can use. So check out that cash flow tool. It is something that we're trying to help people with, whether you're a client or a loan program or not. Use it because it is beneficial.
We'll drop it.
And I will. Sorry, Autumn. And I will tell you, I've talked to several of, the subcontractors who have seen the cash flow model, and they're using in their estimating department now, because really you have to figure out when this project is going to make money and how much cash it's going to take to deliver. And, that's a tool that I think, everyone should at least use when they're bidding a project.
That makes me so happy. That's exactly what I wanted. Like in my brain, that was what I saw the future was going to be when we launched this cash flow tool. So everyone who's listening, I will make sure that a link to the cash flow tool is dropped in the show notes.
Steve, one last question. So the Do Your Part mission that we have, and you were one of the first to jump right on it. And I, again, so appreciate that. We've talked a lot about the things today, just different topics, apprenticeship program, college versus construction, conversations between subs and GCs, the payment model. The Do Your Part mission is our way of putting a name to all that. Like, let's change these conversations. Let's just communicate freely. Let's acknowledge the fact that someone isn't poor with money when you're living in this type of cash flow cycle. They just are living in this type of cash flow cycle. And let's refer to the fact that general contractors are not holding all your money. It's the owners are holding the money, or the bank hasn't given it up, and it's broken. The system is literally broken, but we're trying to fix it. And the last thing we need to do is make it worse by pointing fingers at everyone and blaming either the wrong folks or each other. Is there anything that you think you can think of now that we've been out there that there's something that we can do to better acknowledge that to people in the world, or folks that are hearing us today on this podcast? What can they do in their everyday lives that you've seen successful in and out of construction? Again, you're one of those unique folks that are in the middle. You're not a general contractor, you're not an owner, and you're not a subcontractor, just like us. We see all aspects. But from your perspective, what are the things people can do in their little world, their microcosm of the world, their friends, their relationships, their businesses that can help exactly what we're trying to do?
Well, I think we all make our livelihoods in the same industry, right? And if one part of our industry is suffering or is feeling that if the subs are stressed and the suppliers are stressed, it's not going to make a perfect world for the general contractors, and it's not going to be a perfect world for the owners too, because they're not going to get the quality project that they want delivered. And I think ultimately, we said it earlier. We all have to be invested in delivering the value of these projects. And that comes from all of us working together and figuring out the best way to build these things. So we all have to be open to new conversations, new dialogues. This industry is very unique because it is a relationship industry. There's no more level of trust than you have to have as a subcontractor to have trust that the general contractor is going to do their part, right? I mean, your motto is like everyone does their part, but you have to have a level of trust there, right? You have to have a level of trust that the GC is going to do their part. You have to have a level of trust from the GC that the sub is going to be able to deliver what they promised on, and that the suppliers are going to be able to get the supplies and the materials. It is a relationship-based industry, and we need to work together to solve some of our challenges. And right now, our challenges are, pricing increases, labor, cash flow on projects. I mean, these are the things that, the cash flow on projects has been a problem for years, and we know we're just not figuring that part out. And we need to figure that out, because I think if we want people to invest and come into our industry, we need people to be able to start a business and be able to, become a company owner. And this industry is hard to do. I mean, it does take some time to do that. You can get there, but there is a way that we can make it easier for people to be able to, mom and pops to start up and come in and be very valuable in this industry. And we need to get more of that influx of those kind of folks back in the mix, and that helps. And you can do that by increasing and making these projects being able to be delivered without cash strapping, a company and keeping them locked in. So there's tons of things, but I do think we need to build relationships, start building new folks coming into our industry, new business owners, people taking a chance and coming into our industry. And we need to make it easier for them to do that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Steve, okay, I got a couple of last questions for you that I want to shoot off.
Sure. First
one, I'm going to ask it to you a little different than I normally ask this question, but what is the one thing that you see bring construction businesses down or hurts them significantly? What's the one mistake they tend to make that you see in your experience that ends up really hurting them or bringing them down? It leads them away from this path of success and becoming a millionaire and having the chance to be successful. What is the thing you see them do? If there's anything for them to avoid, what is it?
I think you need to avoid the low bids. Let's be honest. These low bids from a GC side and from a sub side, it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't do anyone any good to put a number on something and know that you can't deliver the work for that price. And for, a GC to know that they can't deliver the work for that price. We need value bids. We need the right bids, and we need the right people on the right projects. So I would say, it's tough. Like we are an industry that is, uber competitive, right? But I think we need to stop taking work without having profits associated with it. I mean, I really do. I think we can do a lot more for our industry if we realize that, we need to be able to make money and be okay with making money, because, no one does this, to be broke. They do it to make a profit, and they do it to employ people, and they do it to, make a living for their family. So, we have to come to a conclusion that, to deliver the types of projects that we deliver, those come with a certain value, and we need to make sure that value is maintained And I heard this from an old time GC from back in the day that I knew and I had a lot of respect for. He goes, look, it's not about the low price, it's about the right price. And, the right price is the right contractor, doing the right thing and being able to deliver, because I can get way more work if the building's built well and the quality's done and it's built on time. I make way more money when that happens than taking the low bid, all the time. So, and I think owners need to understand that too. I think owners need to understand that if you want a value and you want a quality project, then that comes, I'm not saying at a premium, but it's definitely not bargain basement.
Right. Yeah. People got to make money like it is.
Yeah.
Do you have a certain piece of wisdom or advice that you want to share with the audience? If there's maybe the right way to ask you is there one thing that we've talked about today, if there's nothing else that someone takes with them, what is the one thing you want them to walk away with this from?
I think a lot of people, when they're in their jobs, they have their blinders on, they're running their business, if it's Johnny electrician or Joey plumber or whatever their business is, they're really singular focus on how they're going to deliver value to their customers. When I do think that, this is just a plug for ABC too, because, there are people out there like ABC, associations out there that are investing in the industry. And, I think if you want your industry to be great and you want to continue to make a living at it, I think investing in your industry is helpful. So investing in training programs, investing in associations who are doing the right things by your companies, I think all of that is valuable. And I think when you have your blinders on, you're so focused on trying to deliver and not seeing the whole picture of what others are doing to help the industry that is helping you make a living. So I think it's just that. I think it's investing in something bigger than just the actual project that you're trying to build. If you are making a living in this industry, I think you should be investing in the industry as well.
I agree. I think we should leave it right there. That was awesome.
Well, thank you guys. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, that was really is insightful, man. I'm telling you, like the things that you are hammering home on is exactly in line with what we see and customers I talk to and the messaging we try to give. And listen, the messaging we try to give literally comes from the experience of talking to the customers. And I'm just like, why don't you just do it different then? And then like sometimes you hear, well, I can't, or you don't understand. It's just not like that. And I'm like, well, there's 10 other people doing it like that. You should do it too. Like wherever you got that perception from, it's not needed.
And that's the one thing that has been a challenge for me. So, I've sat on school boards, and before I was on the school board, I was on a college trustee board, and, it's just getting people to think differently and evolve, because everything around us is evolving. Right. And, you have some entities that are just kind of stuck in like, well, this is the way that we've always taught people. This is the way that we've always educated people. Mm-hmm. Well, it's different now because people can get educated way cheaper. Yeah. They might not be learning the right things, but they're learning things. And, it's the information is out there. There's not a course that you can take in college that all the answers to the tests aren't online somewhere. Yep. Right. So, I mean, let's be honest, like we need to evolve a little bit in how we educate and train people. And that's a hard conversation to have. And, that's one of the things that I've been trying to do. I appreciate the value of higher education and post-secondary, but I think if we don't start evolving that, because we got a lot of people sitting around not doing stuff, but they got degrees, and we need to figure out a way to get folks involved in producing something in America somewhere. It's getting rough. So
I agree.
You could probably cut all that out. I was just ranting about that.
No way. Not cutting any of that out.
Yeah. Well, Steve, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us. For those folks that aren't aware of ABC, please go check out the ABC Gulf Coast chapter. You can follow Steve on his LinkedIn. You can follow Laura Gross and we'll put the names and ways you can follow them. Laura is very much involved heavily in ABC. She posts all the different content they have. You can go to their website. You can get all kinds of free content, access to schools, classes, anything going on in the area, and a lot of stuff is online too. Of course, we put out a lot of content as well, so you can look at our site or information for anything that ABC is doing as well. And Steve, I just want to thank you, man, for being so honest, sharing, and open and communicating. I think you're definitely going to help a lot of people here today listening to this, and that just means a lot to me personally and to all of our clients, customers, and audience. So thank you.
It was great to be with you guys, and I'll do it anytime.
All right.
Thanks, Steve. We appreciate you.
Thank you guys for listening to the Real MF'ers podcast. And until next time, we'll catch you later. See ya.
Take care.